What? What's good? What's happening? I don't even know if this is in focus. Like, how am I supposed to tell if I'm sitting like 2 meters away from the camera? So today, my dudes, we're going to review some period dramas because there's plenty of those still in the world. And well, let's judge things. Let's be mean. So we're gonna start off with a movie I haven't even watched, which makes it a perfect choice. We're gonna start off with Crimson Peak. This is a film that did not get very positive reviews, but damn, are the costumes good. Again, I haven't even seen it, and I think it should stay this way because the costumes are, dare I say, pretty good. The costumes are mostly 1890s, which is one of my favorite Victorian era decades in fashion, so I might be a little bit subjective in this, but what I really like about those costumes is how the designer took the silhouette and kind of, she didn't mess with the silhouette, like she just left the silhouette as it should be, but instead she was really creative with textures. I need to open the door because my mom's not gonna get in. So instead, she was really creative with textures and fabrics and choice of them, and it's really mind-blowing because it's like the whole silhouette is historically accurate, but then the fabrics that she chose are so like organic and they don't really have much to do with 1890s, but you know, just those things combined just make it fit the mood perfectly, like it's kind of like a creepy story. Again, I haven't even seen the film, I don't even know what it's about, but I think she managed to come up with like a solution of like a period drama that is a horror flick at the same time. So what she did was she's got those beautiful 1890s elegant costumes, but just to make sure they're not too pretty, she kind of added in those scary things, I guess. So we've got a couple of like iconic Crimson Peak costumes. There is this really weird gown that's worn by Jessica Chastain, and in terms of historical accuracy, it doesn't have much to do with 1890s. It's supposed to be like almost a decade earlier because it's like 1880 or 1881 at most. It's like really natural form. Generally speaking, anything Jessica Chastain wears is like a decade back. So if we're talking like particular characters, then she is wearing stuff that is way too old. Like if it was supposed to be an actual real story, she would not be wearing stuff like that, especially not with the long train, because this is like way too old. If she was an old lady, that would kind of pass because elderly people usually wore stuff from a couple of years back, so I guess if you stretched it that way, that could work. Also, I'm not sure about what Tom Hiddleston is wearing most of the time. It seems very like goth to me. Definitely the main character's style and generally speaking outfits are the best part of the movie's costuming because they not only get the silhouette right, but they also managed to make it very intricate and just like, it's just so much to look at, like it's just gorgeous. And they weren't afraid of the huge sleeves, which is also a big thing because in Hollywood most of the time they are trying to avoid the over-the-top trends from particular eras because they're like, we can't make Mia Wasikowska wear this stuff because she's gonna look ridiculous, but no, they tried it and it worked and she actually looks good. Also, her hair is something that would actually have been worn a couple of years later. It was kind of like a conscious choice not to make her wear those ugly bangs. Late 1890s, hairstyles like this started appearing, so it's not that awful. And can we just talk about this hand clasp belt, which is so awesome, and I've seen some examples of it from 20th century. I'm not sure if it ever existed in the 19th century, but it's just so cool, and it's just one of those like unsettling things that appeared in the movie, and I think like as far as the costume choices go, this is great. This movie gets a donut, it definitely does. Now, let's talk about Young Victoria. It's a movie I have seen in like 2011, and so I can't really remember it that well, and also by like at the time when I watched it I didn't really have a lot of interest in fashion history, so I can't really remember what exactly happened back there. The only thing I can remember is that everything was really sweet and kind of like cute in a way, and I just wonder whether that was historically accurate or not. So this dress, like the pale yellow thingy with the like lace on top of it, it looks okay to a certain degree. I think, I'm not sure because like I haven't read any Victoria's biographies or anything, but I think there were a lot of things to choose from in 1830s, and this is not a very royal choice, if that makes sense. It just looks really girly. Maybe it's just about the color palette that they kind of came out with for the movie, because I'm not sure. Like this one looks much better, and it's not the same one, or is it? Or is it? Damn it! No, because that's a ball. And also I think they had trouble with differentiating day dresses from evening dresses, because she wears like a really low neckline a couple of times in scenes, I think, that were not meant to be evening scenes. So again, that probably was the director's choice anyway, but... Also, I'm not a huge fan of the blue dress with the lace. It just seems too simple for a queen. I think it just looks like something I made a couple of years ago, which is not a good sign. I'm not a huge fan of the color palette in general. It seems really naive. Maybe that was, you know, probably that was a conscious choice to kind of to suggest that that was her state of mind at the time, and that was the very beginning of her rule, and that, you know, she was just about to transform into this more mature woman. But like from what I've read about her, she was quite determined from the very start. So, and also I'm not a huge fan of like the choice of fabrics, because she would have the most expensive fabrics they had at the time, meaning probably silks. And as far as I've noticed, there are only a couple of silk dresses in the movie, and I don't know, it just seems really girly, which is again probably a conscious choice, but I wish they copied more dresses that you can see on her portraits from the era. So yeah, I think I like the silk dresses much better than the weird... I don't even know what the fabric that is. It's probably still silk, but it's just not as luscious. And actually oh, see, this is the stuff I'm talking about. Like, all of the ladies in waiting are wearing this like intricately embroidered dresses, whereas Queen Victoria herself is wearing this like lacy fluffy stuff, which is also very 1830s. I'm just wondering whether that's the right choice for the Queen of England. And also, why the hell is she not wearing her bonnet? Brooklyn! Brooklyn, really, is it that old? So anyway, I've seen the film when it came out, or was it, is it even in focus? Does that even make sense to film something if you can't see what's happening? So anyway, I've seen the movie, and I actually quite like the costumes. Oh, I forgot to say that young Victoria gets half a donut. So anyway, Brooklyn, what I liked about it is that it portrayed a kind of like a low-class girl that can't really afford that much clothing, but it still managed to give you this idea of what 1950s fashion looked like. When it comes to hair, I think it's a bit too messy, but it's also quite accurate, because despite what the like mainstream trend said at the time, like, oh, cut your hair, go really short, like here is Audrey Hepburn in Roman Holiday, do the same thing. Despite that, a lot of women, especially those that were kind of lower class, did not decide to do that at all. So they kind of stayed with the idea that their hair should reach sort of like, let's say, their arms or something. I also kind of like the color palette, because it's not like obviously in your face 1950s pastel shades candy extravaganza, but instead it's like, it's not killing you with all the shades. Like, you're not like, oh god, what the hell's going on? Because sometimes I think people overdo 1950s. Like, they take the designs that they see in the magazines and they just go like, oh. It was much more balanced than that, you know, like you had some really nice shades, but you also had lots of grays. Well, it also depended on the time of the year. I don't know, there's just something about the grading of the film that even her yellow stuff, which should be like really, you know, vibrant, it's kind of toned down a bit, so it's not too obviously trying to be this like colorful 50s palette. I don't know, that probably doesn't make any sense at all. I also like that her dresses and skirts are not that crazily full, and it's also nice because it's like I think it's supposed to be like early 50s, so you can still see some like 1940s remains in some of the fashion choices. For example, the suit that she's wearing looks late 1940s. And also what's cool is that they managed to give her this like young person vibe. Like she's wearing a lot of blouses with skirts instead of like full-on dresses or like tight suits, and that's again something that people where's my English? Because it's not here. It's again something that people often forget when it comes to setting their films in like 1950s. It's like not every single person wore like Vogue clothing. It varied very much from age to age, and it also depended on what kind of job you had. So I think the choice they made with like blouses and cardigans and general less impressive clothing that you would expect from a 1950s movie is a really good choice, may I say. And also I love that they didn't overdo the accessories. Like they didn't go over the top with the hats and the gloves and stuff like that. So some very conscious choices were made here, and they were good choices. Donut. Sleepy Hollow. I don't even know why this movie is in here, because I should have done like a Halloween edition of costume review, but I didn't really think about that. My skin is really awful. So no, I forgot, and I'm gonna do it now. Sleepy Hollow has some amazing costumes, except they're like 20 years too old. And it's really weird because I remember when I first saw the stripy gown and I was like, well, that's either 1770s or 1870s, because I can't really tell, because the guy looks kind of 19th century. She is wearing like 18th century stuff, and then all of the people around her are wearing some random clothes, so I was really confused. And then you have this mother figure, which is this like dress with a really low neckline and her boobs are out, and you can't really tell what's going on, and then she wears her hair loose all the time, like practically no one is wearing a cap ever, and it's just a little bit messy in terms of setting it in a particular time, I think. And it may be a conscious decision of the director to kind of avoid setting it in a particular time to kind of give you this fairy tale vibe, but then at the end of the movie it says 1799, which gives you a clear idea that what just happened was probably a year or two earlier, and that doesn't match at all with what they're wearing. So let's focus on Katerina. So she is wearing stuff that would have been worn at the end of 1770s and in the 1780s. So basically she's wearing zone front gowns, which is a weird name and it didn't exist at the time, but anyway, it's like a modern name apparently. But it basically meant that your bodice was cut in a way that you had second layer, or sometimes even a different piece that was like diagonal, and it doesn't make sense at all, just check it out. So basically that's what she's wearing most of the time. Then she's got this weird dress with lacing in front, which is not very historically accurate, but it's all really pretty, and like I like the attention to details they have. And then the famous stripy dress, you know, which again is like 1780s, let's say. It's also a bit weird that she wears her hair down, because that was a thing that was allowed when you were like 13, and because of her really childish face, it kind of, if you're interested in fashion history and if you're kind of like lose hair a child, then it kind of gives you this weird impression that she's underage and then he is like into her, and it's just a bit odd. So it took me a while to understand that she's not actually like a small girl. But I like how they tried to make her look a little bit witchy, so like she has all these tiny things that are supposed to be a bit mysterious and are supposed to give you like this witchy vibe. It's all kind of cool. So like it all works, but then I was like, I noticed the date at the end and I was like, why is it like that? And I think, I'm not sure, but I think it might be because they were just supposed to be this like family that's living in a countryside and they're not exactly up to date with the latest fashions, but then they would be literally like almost 20 years late, which is kind of extreme. Like the differences between fashions in the countryside and in the city usually were not that huge. Like it's probably like a couple of years back, but if you weren't an old lady or like if you weren't into fall costume, you would usually not wear stuff from 20 years ago. But that's just a bit too extreme, I think. And as much as I love her hairstyle, it makes her look beautiful and like really girly and feminine, it should be up. Like if it's supposed to be like early 1980s, it should be up in this huge hairdo. If it's supposed to be later 1980s, she should be wearing this like really curly hedgehog type hairstyle. And I understand that it might not work for everyone, but like if Keira Knightley can do it, then Christina Ricci should be fine. But again, this I think was a choice to make her more witchy or like magical or like this elfish creature type girl. That again, the hairstyle is why I thought, seeing the pictures of the dress from the distance, why I thought this might be 1870s, because this is more an 1870s hairstyle. If it was more like built up at the back, but basically together with a bustle like this, it kind of could work as an 1870s hairstyle, except it's not. So it doesn't work. And the other fashions, I'm actually a huge fan of the dress that what the hell was the name of the lady? Lady Van Tassel wears, mainly because I love Preraphelites, and that's like a quote from a Preraphelite painting. So I'm really into, you know, reusing motifs like that, and I'm really into conscious borrowing motifs from paintings and art, and I love it, and I think it's a really cool thing, except it makes her look a bit more 17th century, which again would not be that bad if the whole timeline of the costumes would not be that over the place. A lot of things don't quite work together. Even though I love the costuming, and I'm still gonna make that dress one day, because damn, the stripes are fine. So this movie gets like half a donut. Why am I on Facebook? I was supposed to be making a video, and instead I'm reading my friends' messages, and they're not even that interesting. Now, to make sure that that was an accurate opinion, I'm gonna ask an expert in the topic. So what do you think about the films I just talked about, huh? What do you think? No, don't bite my hand, just talk. Talk to me. Do you agree with my opinion on the matter? Do you think that was an accurate representation of what the costume should look like? What do you think? And this is why, ladies and gentlemen, I will not make the interview with my cat video anytime soon. See you soon.